Wednesday, December 13th. The German battleship Graf Spee, commanded by Captain Hans Langsdorff, is spotted in the South Atlantic by the British cruisers Achilles, Ajax, and Exeter. After clashing in the mouth of the River Platte and suffering damages, one of the most serious hits being to the helm caused by the impact of shells from the British ships, the Graf Spee takes refuge and undergoes repairs in neutral Uruguayan waters in the port of Montevideo. International maritime law allow it to stay for a maximum of 24 hours. Meanwhile, the Royal Navy ships, which have been joined by the heavy cruiser Cumberland, await its exit from the port. In Europe, a group of Finnish reconnaissance planes spot the Soviet 44th Rifle Division, composed of 25,000 Ukrainians marching along the Rat Road to reinforce the 163rd Division around Suwalmasalmi. Colonel Halmar Sulasvuo, at the head of the Finnish troops, tries to block their advance. In the Sea War, U-38, commanded by Heinrich Liebe, sinks the British ship Deptford, and Klaus Korth's U-57 sinks the Mina. Torpedoes fired by the British submarine Salmon, meanwhile, cause serious damage to the German cruisers Leipzig and Nuremberg when they are patrolling the central area of the North Sea. Thursday, December 14th. Hitler orders General Alfred Jodl, Chief of Operations of the Armed Forces High Command, OKW, to begin preparing plans for the invasion of Denmark and Norway. Operation Weserbrunn, the code name for the conquest of the two countries, has the support of the pro-Nazi leader Vidkun Quisling of the Norwegian National Unity Party, who has promised 30,000 men for the cause from his Herd and Foreguard paramilitary forces. These militants, the equivalent of the German SS and SA, are ready to back the Nazi invasion with a coup d'etat to force King Haakon VII to name Quisling Prime Minister. The League of Nations agrees to expel the Soviet Union from the organization for its aggression against Finland. It also calls on members to offer all the help possible to the Finns. The British government begins to organize a contingent whose task, after disembarking in the Norwegian port of Narvik, will be to journey to Finland and to destroy en route the Swedish iron deposits that supply the Third Reich. Meanwhile, the RAF send 12 bombers to attack the German ships anchored in the mouth of the River Elbe in front of the North Frisian Islands, and to the naval base of Wilhelmshaven. 6 of the planes are shot down, and only one of the German cruisers is sunk by the British submarine Ursula. Friday, December 15th. The US, French, and British governments put pressure on the Uruguayan government to force the battleship Graf Spee to leave the port of Montevideo. However, the German ambassador manages to obtain an extension for the ship to stay 72 hours. All its crew has disembarked, awaiting repairs to the helm. The Winter War continues to give problems to the Red Army in Finland. The Battle of Tomajärvi has ended with the annihilation of the Soviet 139th Division and the capture of a large amount of Russian war material by the Finnish army. The Finnish government warns the Soviets that its soldiers will fight on to the last man. The Finns know that Stalin intends to divide the country in two. Along the whole front, the Sisit, infantry patrols made up of expert skiers, continue their night attacks against the Soviet troops, demonstrating their effective guerrilla tactics. Losses continue to mount in the Red Army, which does not have good air cover and lacks communication equipment. British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain visits the troops of the Expeditionary Force in France, which form part of the 5th Allied Division stationed to the south of Lille. In the Sea War, U-48, commanded by Herbert Schulze, sinks the merchant ship Germain. Saturday, December 16th. The main Soviet attack begins in the area of Suma, to the northeast of the Mannerheim Line, with heavy artillery bombardments. The Red Army tries to imitate German blitzkrieg, lightning war, but the difficult terrain and the deeply entrenched Finnish troops halt its advance. At dusk, the Finnish Sisit carry out a number of hit-and-run attacks and manage to destroy 70 Soviet tanks. The Finnish resistance is not receiving help from the Allied countries. Besides the logistic difficulties, France and Britain are reluctant to declare war on Stalin's Russia, and Sweden and Norway are unwilling to end their neutrality. Hans Langsforth, the commander of the German battleship Admiral Graf Spee, sends a message from Montevideo to Admiral Erich Raeder, the head of the Kriegsmarine, requesting instructions. Raeder consults Hitler, who orders the battleship to be sunk by its own crew. In the submarine war U-59, commanded by Harold Gerst, sinks the Norwegian ship Glitterfjell and Swedish boat Lister. Sunday, December 17th. The captain of the Graf Spee receives orders to prevent the ship from falling into British hands. Given the impossibility of reaching the nearby port of Buenos Aires, Hans Lansdorff, known as the Gentleman of the Sea by his men, decides the crew should board the support merchantman Tacoma and other Argentine ships. With a few men, he maneuvers the ship out of the docks at Montevideo to sea. In front of the coast, watched by the Royal Navy, Langdorff orders the few crew members accompany him to open the valves and set explosives at strategic points of the ship. They then abandon the Graf Spee, which at 7:56 p.m. is hit by a number of explosions and sinks in shallow waters, watched by the crews of the British ships hunting it and hundreds of onlookers on shore. In Suma, Finland, the Soviet 7th Army has managed to cross the Mannerheim Line, but as night falls, the Finns counterattack and force the surrender of a Russian division made up of more than 35,000 men. In the Sea War, U-59, commanded by Harold Gerst, sinks the Danish merchant ships Bogo and Jagersborg, while 5 ships with 8,000 Canadian soldiers arrive in Britain after crossing the Atlantic, escorted by 2 battleships and an aircraft carrier. Monday, December 18th. The Finnish government receives the news that the United States will provide 50 planes to help in the war against the Soviet Union, and announces the recruitment of all young men of 17 and above not already in the Army. The 22 RAF Wellington bombers sent to attack the German naval base at Wilhelmshaven are surprised by 50 German Me-109 fighters above the island of Heligoland in the North Sea. "12 British planes and 4 Luftwaffe aircraft are shot down in the air battle. The British aircraft were detected at a distance of 120 kilometers by the 1st Freya radar station situated on the German island of Vanderrugge in the North Sea." Hitler, on a visit to the house of his close friends, the editor Hugo Bruckmann and his wife Elsa, expresses his consternation at the loss of the battleship Graf Spee, but predicts that within a year, Britain will be beaten thanks to the use of magnetic mines and the planes of the Luftwaffe. "We will force it onto its knees before Germany," he says. The British government names Commodore Henry Harwood Rear Admiral and awards him the title of Sir.